Where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood!
Oh, I thought... never mind. Okay. Sorry, my apologies, guys. We were experimenting with something a little bit different there. This is Damn You Hollywood. Nope, we're not restarting.
Okay.
Don't. We record this live. We don't really edit it. Our listener base, such as it is, relies on our authenticity as some part of the draw for this show. If we ever achieve a degree of actual production polish, I expect our numbers to tank.
That's a fair argument.
Anyway, this is Damn You Hollywood, everyone. I am Robert Winfree. I am your host. Here with me, as usual, the mandated reporter enjoying a current state of mortification, Mr. Mark Radulich.
Yo.
How the heck are you, Mark?
I'm fine.
Alrighty then.
I believe in the immortal words of whatever the lead character's name is in Rogue One, let's just get this over with.
Jyn Erso.
Yeah.
And you're the Star Wars nut. I could take the franchise or leave it.
At this point, all I remember is Darth Vader slaughtering a bunch of rebels.
Well, I mean, that is the best part.
Indeed.
All right. It is just Mark and I tonight. Alexis is otherwise occupied and just, in all fairness, if she took any excuse to avoid seeing this movie, I'm not going to blame her or anyone else.
Yeah, this movie. I was reading some notes on it, and at the risk of dragging this podcast out well longer than I want it to be, I was kind of looking at the production notes on the Wikipedia page, and this kind of caught my attention. So the film went through a troubled production due to frequent clashes between director Gray and producer Parks, which started when the executive overseeing project, Sony's executive vice president of production, Dave Ballbearings, exited the studio in the summer of 2018. It was never replaced. By the way, this is a Sony picture, in case you were wondering. In the early draft of the script, which Sony...
A troubled Sony production? Heaven forbid.
I know.
I must clutch my pearls now in shock and horror at this unprecedented event. Sony
has such a pristine record of smooth as silk productions. It's amazing.
I can't believe the unlucky nature of this movie to be the one Sony gaffe. I feel bad for everyone involved now. I can't keep the bit going.
An early draft of the script, which Sony initially praised and got the attention of stars Hemsworth and Thompson, had an edgier tone than the finished film and featured socio-political commentary on the current debate around surrounding immigration.
Oh, God. Thank God they cut it. I absolutely mean that. When they set up, there's an early scene in this movie where they talk about, we're Earth. We were home to the first great alien migration. I went, oh, good God, no. I don't need this out of this movie. Just stop.
I actually wouldn't have minded it if it was handled with any degree of decorum and intelligence. But
I had no faith in this movie to do that.
Fair enough. I want to come back to this point a little bit later, and when we start about the craft review, because there was a difference that I noticed in this movie from the first one with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones that I think bears some discussion. So anyway, the main antagonists were to be an alien music group inspired by the Beatles.
Okay, hold on. I have to say this. Watching Chris Hemsworth blow up a rough facsimile of the Beatles might have made all the crappy preaching about immigration policy worth it. Because I hate the Beatles.
With the four members merging into one villain called Devastator. No. Merging into one villain during the climax.
The fact that you said that and I just went, you know what, this is such a stupid movie, they might just try to get away with the copyright infringement.
Parks, who had final cut on the film, had a heavy hand in overseeing rewrites during pre-production and filming. Parks' new script pages stripped away the early draft's more modern sensibilities and arrived daily for Helmsworth and Thompson, who were both so confused that they hired their own dialogue writers.
Which is to say, they improved.
Parks that figures. That explains some of the acting in this movie. Parks not only dictated rewrites, but also stepped in on directing duties, although no Directors Guild of America rules were said to have been violated. I don't know how if your producer is over-directing the director.
Well, I mean, they said no director or production guild rules were violated when what's his stupid face? Edward Norton literally locked the director out of the editing room on American History X.
Fair enough. Gray tried to exit the production several times, but was convinced to stay by Sony. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Gray was held hostage by Sony.
There we go. Oh, that's the best line ever. He tried to get out. They said, but the Sony executives in my mind are now like Ursula the Sea Witch. I've got a signed contract. You've got nothing. Now dance, monkey.
Parks and Gray also clashed over the color correction process during post-production. The studio tested two cuts, one put together by Gray and other by Parks, with the version by Parks being chosen as the theatrical cut. Well, of course it was. Because get your politics out of my science fiction comedy.
Well, hang on. In fairness to that point, which again I actually did, which is my point generally, I do agree with you. If you're going to handle it with anything approaching deftness and, writing savvy, then it can be used to genuinely enhance the overall experience of the movie. That's fine. That's how that works. Like, I'm not one of those guys who says a movie can't try stuff like that. I don't like it all necessarily. And that's even if we're talking about a movie that winds up taking a political stance I agree with. And I just think I don't like it going in, but I do accept and have, it's been demonstrated that it can be handled correctly in a way to enhance the overall narrative and the movie-going experience. After watching this giant turkey gobble around the studio for, the 2-hour runtime or whatever it was, yeah, no. It's so much better that they stayed away from the crappy virtue signaling.
Well, there has to be some sort of collective wisdom going on in Hollywood because there's a pattern developing. I have something to say, and I have some talented people in which to deliver my message that I believe is relevant to the current culture. Great, take it to the TV department. No one wants to see that on the big screen.
Well, no one wants. I'll stand up for the opposite point for just a very minor way. No one wants to see it in what's supposed to be a big budget blockbuster, and here's why. I'm not even going to get into how do I say this? I'm not even going to get into the stupid notion that the movie-going audience is so, again, profoundly inept and inane that they just want to watch shiny things blow up. Don't get me wrong, those people exist. I mean, Mark, I don't mean this unkindly. You go to movies like that for that reason on occasion. I go to movies like that on occasion, knowing that's what I'm getting into.
Sure.
And I enjoy them sometimes. But if your premise is going to be, I'm going to take a political stance in this movie that's designed to appeal to the broadest possible base of people, you have to handle it deftly, and I've yet to see one that does in the recent past. I have yet to see one that actually handles it with a degree of deftness. And second point, you bunch of fart-sniffing morons, you're deliberately ignoring half the country.
Well, let me counterpoint here. It seems like you have people who have a germ of an idea. They're told take it to television, where they're given infinitely more freedom, and they create I know it wasn't your favorite thing, and certainly the dive in a lot of people's minds that it took might undermine this point, but bear with me. You have something like Game of Thrones, right? Which obviously had a huge audience.
Massive. Absolutely massive audience.
Right. And took a lot of chances. Now, Now, let us assume by some act of magic you could have accomplished the Game of Thrones series in a 3-picture arc. There's no way, a Hollywood studio executive is letting them take those kinds of chances. I mean, New Line let Peter Jackson get away with a lot, but I think it was kind of, they seem to have taken the stance of, well, if we're going to do it, let's get 100% behind the guy, because I don't remember Peter Jackson really saying New Line Cinema. First of all, New Line Cinema is a smaller studio.
All things considered, I mean, there's a reason they've been sold since.
Yeah.
I think Time Warner or AT&T owns them now.
I believe you are correct. I believe, though, at the time, they were, their own kind of independent studio, and they got behind Peter Jackson, and voila, he created magic. But we're years away. We're like 20 years now away from those movies. I don't remember exactly.
Hang on. They came out like my last years of high school, which were, I believe, so it would have been 02, 03, and 04.
Yep, 20 years, give or take.
Not exactly 20, but closer to 20. Closer to 20 than 15.
Sure. And so we're almost 20 years removed from those movies, and I don't think any studio executive has the nerve to let an artist like Peter Jackson just go whole hog and create something beautiful. They end up, we talk about this all the time on this show, that these movies, and I'm going to bring up one that's kind of a hard point between you and I, but bear with me again. I really don't want to I don't want to refight this argument.
Okay, use it to elucidate your point. I will not refight the original argument.
But like Ghostbusters, Answer the Call, had an opportunity to be something interesting, but I think even Paul Feig was like the studio just kept fighting him. Now look, he may have come up with something that was even worse than what ended up on film with his reimagining of what his, I don't know. I think he was thinking, well, what if we took Hairspray and merged it with Ghostbusters? Do you like it? I don't know. Hard.
You're giving him too much creative credit.
It's hard to say where he was going, but I think you and I may not like him as a director. You may not like his particular brand of creativity, but I don't think you can argue he's not a creative guy. I just think he has a different vision than what we enjoy. So you have these opportunities to take a famous IP, do something really, really interesting with it, and then show it to an audience that's kind of split between, I went because I really enjoy this IP, and I went because they were doing something really interesting with it that I otherwise wouldn't have bothered with this film. A lot of this stuff builds on word of mouth. I remember, I'll go back to the Star Wars, A New Hope, when it was just known as Star Wars thing. And George Lucas, they were like, "Oh, aren't you proud of your movie? It was the #1 movie of its weekend." He was like, "Yeah, let's talk about it in 3 or 4 weeks," and it was still the #1 movie. Star Wars' legacy was built initially on word of mouth. It attracted the initial run of people who were into science fiction and fantasy and the old Flash Gordon reels and stuff like that. And they loved it so much they told everybody they knew, and everybody they knew went to go see the damn thing.
If I might offer another example in that same vein of The Wizard of Oz. Now, this is a slightly different... this played out slightly differently, but the fundamental point is still the same. The Wizard of Oz, when it was released theatrically, was a pretty significant failure. The studio did not know how to market it properly. They did not know how to generate any kind of interest in the movie as a product. And it wasn't until after it became more widely available via television distribution, because that was becoming a thing, or not even mostly that, actually, because VHS, the home studio VHSs were still quite a ways away. But it took a while for that to start generating the type of buzz that led it to be recognized as a classic. And I mean, there are still people who, especially in the contemporary movie making society, say that I don't want to be I don't want to be the next Wizard of Oz. Not because no one likes the movie, but because, again, it was not very successful initially. It took time. I mean, I think Rob Reiner said that about The Princess Bride when he made it. It was not a very successful movie during its theatrical run. It took a lot of the release on VHS and that becoming prevalent, and the people who did see it, who loved it because it's a great movie, sharing it with more of their families, talking about it with other people, getting the word of mouth going, and then sharing it generationally. I mean, The Wizard of Oz never dies because your parents who loved it showed it to you, and you enjoyed it, and you wind up sharing it to your kids. The same. I mean, the original Star Wars trilogy is kind of the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Princess Bride is kind of the same way. But again, they relied a lot on more word of mouth than a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign with Super Bowl spots.
Right. So, by the way, the Austin Powers followed the same track. The first Austin Powers movie, where I don't believe it did very well at all, and then it had a second life on VHS, then spawned 2 sequels.
There were at least, God help me because I hate this man, at least 2 major Ben Stiller movies followed that same pattern. Like their original theatrical releases were okay, but then they just kept growing once, like Zoolander I think was that way. Just its theatrical run was a lot of meh, but it grew.
So going back to this Men in Black, I mean, I don't know if the world was really aching for a soft reboot of the Men in Black franchise. A lot of what sold the initial run of those movies was the likability of Will Smith. And having rewatched it again over the weekend, because I think Comedy Central was running a marathon of them on Father's Day, and so we watched the first one, my daughter and I, because I wanted to show her the original.
Still the best.
And that's the thing. It's like, I don't know how well this movie works or how much of an audience it garners if Will Smith isn't, I'm going to steal a line from Hal Rudnick, at the height of his powers. I mean,
that's very true. I mean, you and I are old enough to remember. I think anyone who's like 20-ish or lower in the age bracket was like maybe not even really alive when Will Smith was at. Because there was a period of time, for those of you out there listening who might be too young to either remember this or just, again, weren't really living, depending on how old you are. There was a time when Will Smith was a box office god.
Yeah, he's kind of what The Rock is now.
More reliable, actually, in terms of financial returns. And I say that as a huge fan of The Rock's. But The Rock's had some duds. He just makes, 3 to 4 movies a year and gets 1 mega hit, 2 that are okay, and takes a bath on 1. But he just works so much that's kind of inevitable.
The Rock is a human roulette wheel.
Yeah, whereas Will Smith was more picky about his roles, and as a result, when a big budget Will Smith project was set to come out in the summer, the man had a lot of box office cachet just because of the projects he chose. I mean, I remember the hype and the fervor around Independence Day. Mm-hmm. I still enjoy that movie, quite frankly. It's one of like 2 Roland Emmerich movies I actually enjoy. And he just had like a series of 3 or 4 over a 2-year period or so that were just smash hits, and the original Men in Black was one of them.
So I get, and look, if you come to me with a pitch saying, hey, I want to do Men in Black, which actually to a degree dealt with immigration, maybe not as a flashpoint of political activity and intrigue, but it dealt with the subject even just a touch. And so, but we want to reboot the thing with Chris Hemsworth in the Tommy Lee Jones role and Tessa Thompson in the Will Smith role. You've got my ear. That's not a bad pitch, and I think there's a place for it in today's culture. But you've still got to write a movie that, look, Tessa Thompson's a fine actress and everything, but she's not Will Smith. And Chris Hemsworth, I think, gets a lot of praise for his role as Thor, but I don't think he's a proven box office commodity. He has the benefit of the Marvel Association. So neither one of
I
these guys is able to
agree.
really carry a franchise that already isn't a self-sustaining IP.
Yeah, I agree with you about Chris Hemsworth. I will say this in his defense. I think he absolutely can be, that guy, but he's not yet found the role outside of Thor that really...
He keeps trying.
He's going to do it. He's going to do it eventually if he keeps taking shots. I mean, he will find it eventually, but he hasn't found it yet.
No, he had, outside of Thor, he tried Snow White and the Huntsman, which got a sequel, but neither one did great. Not enough to sustain a. I mean, I remember this because we are just swimming in movie knowledge here, but. If you run outside and yell into the wind, who remembers what movies Chris Hemsworth has been in that was a franchise? And don't say Thor. No one's coming up with the Snow White movies. And then, so I saw him actually in something at the El Rey or whatever the hell it was.
Bad Times at the El Royale, where he plays basically a version of Charles Manson.
And he was actually really good in that.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, he's a hell of an actor, but he's having some, now he's trying his hand at this Men in Black thing, and this is gonna die, and they're gonna.
I mean, he tried his hand at that crappy Ghostbusters movie too, and in fairness to Hemsworth, he's the only watchable part of that movie.
Yeah, he's also not the lead.
True.
That isn't really that's a franchise. That's like saying Annie Potts. Was part of the franchise. She's in the movie, but she's not Dan Aykroyd or Bill Murray or, God bless him, Hal Ramis. So just rounding this back to where we started here, I think they took. I started with. It seems like every interesting idea ends up on television, where the executives go, "Who cares?" Like just do whatever you want. You play, television is a sandbox. Go play in it. We don't care. And then obviously there are some misses. There are things that just don't get an audience. But there are television shows winning all kinds of awards and breaking all kinds of. I mean, Game of Thrones was the most watched TV show ever.
And
I think in modern, it broke some record. I don't remember what it was.
It did. Let me be clear. It did break some records. Some limited to HBO, but a few other just kind of general ones.
Okay.
I mean, that said, I have to point this out because I always have to point this out whenever people try to bring this up. Yeah, it's like it's a fraction of the rating and percentage of the population watching it that MASH got.
Okay, I'm again not comparing it to when there were 3 channels.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So, that being said, there was an opportunity here that I think a lot of cowardice and a lot of poor common thinking among Hollywood executives. So I can tank this movie. I can't blame people for not going to see it. I wouldn't have gone to see it. This wasn't originally on the calendar. Shaft was. Whole of the story.
You know what? No. I mean this in all seriousness. I think we will have a better quasi discussion around this than we would around Shaft, because you'd just be quoting the movie and I'd be wanting to die.
What did you think of Shaft? Black folks. All right, here comes the money.
No, it would be. I'd try to bring up a plot point and you'd respond with a quote from Samuel L. Jackson in the movie.
Probably.
I'd bring up another point and you'd respond with one from Roundtree. I'd bring up another one, and that's how that would go.
So I threw this on there because it's fine. It's got 2 leading stars from a relatively recent successful franchise. It had a lot of things potentially going for it, and then I saw it. So let's talk about it.
All right. Is there anything else I wanted to say before we get into this? No, I think a lot of. Again, I think if you want to make those kinds of statements in the movie business, you can't do it. I shouldn't say can't. You are deeply unlikely to be successful at it in a movie with a budget of at least $100 million. It's just, again, when you do something like that, if you want to try and talk about immigration, if you want to take a specific political stance, and let's be I feel I'm almost 100% certain that they were going to take a specific political stance on this. They weren't just going to talk about it generally. Fairly certain about this. We're not just going to use immigration as a backdrop. We're going to shame people. And I do have to mention there's a lot of, and I think you're correct when you talk about, wrong thinking in Hollywood, that perpetually forgets that 50 or so % of the country disagrees with them.
Yeah, obviously, I think taking a stance on it they would have gotten poor reviews from some of the hyper liberal critics. But I think the general
no. They would have gotten good reviews from the hyper liberal critics. This was this was totally going to be an open border movie.
Well, no. You didn't hear what I said. If they did not take a stand, if they just presented it as a backdrop, and sort of played both sides and said, "Here are the issues, aliens," then
they get a lot of. I think you're correct. You get a lot of people going, well, how dare you not actually take a stand on anything?
This isn't brave, but I think you would have had I think you would have had a larger audience because I think
almost 100% larger, coincidentally.
But I think also you would have. I think the average movie-going review would have been basically, I liked how they represented both sides. Look, I get that half the country watches Fox News, the other half watches everything else. In
fairness, even the half that watches Fox, about a quarter of those are turning off because Fox News is kind of terrible.
Well, they had a good run.
No.
Well, look. No. I don't want to get into a whole thing about Fox News, but there was a point where, I think Fox News was the most watched cable news channel.
It might,
ever.
In all fairness, it might still be that. I mean, I've heard this joke, and I think it's probably true. You know what's keeping CNN on the airwaves? Airports.
That's a fair point. I walked into a lot of public spaces where Fox News was playing. But the point is,
in fairness, that does largely depend on which part of the country you're in. What public spaces will show which.
You're not wrong. But
they both suck.
But no, I think most people would have. I think most people don't necessarily have to see their views on display in a vacuum, but gravitate more towards at least seeing both sides of the argument and neither one be, they kind of want a zero-sum political argument. And they want to be entertained. Like no one's going to Men in Black strictly to be for a political harangue.
True.
But
if you are, I don't know what to tell you.
But if you go and they say, well, here's one side of it, here's the other side of it, make up your own mind, we're not passing any judgments, and here's Chris Hemsworth abs, I think you've got a pretty successful formula for a well-received movie. Give me a plot synopsis, goddammit.
This movie has no plot.
Oh, it has a plot. It's just not a good one.
All right. I'm not even going to warn you about spoilers. Who cares? No one cares.
None of you are going to see this anyway. I don't even know why we're talking about it.
No one cares about this movie. We open with a flashback to the Wayback Machine to 2016, when Chris Hemsworth and Liam Neeson stop an alien entity known as the Hive from invading the planet and taking it over. We then flash even further back to... Okay, I know normally I try to limit my editorializing in this, and Mark tries to limit my editorializing in this. I can't in this instance. I just can't. We flash back to young Tessa Thompson helping a furry death machine evade capture because Lord knows it being loose and then recruited by, in the words of this movie itself, the biggest intergalactic arms dealer in the galaxy, made the world a better place. She sees the Men in Black neuralize her parents, but they think she's asleep, so she escapes unneuralized and is now aware that the truth is out there and begins to doggedly pursue it.
You know what kills me about that? Will Smith waving the neuralizer around like a conductor's wand because he wants to make sure everyone gets it, and these people don't even check the house. Like, boy, have the Men in Black gotten lazy.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to say. That's a lazy operation they got going on right now. So she begins looking for this organization. She applies to the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, whatever bureaucratic branch of the government she can, and is constantly rejected for being delusional about aliens. And I really have to, like, this character is presented as a deeply intelligent person. I seriously have to question the intelligence of any human being who goes to the recruitment office and says, you know the most secret part of your agency? Yeah, that. I mean, really? Anyway, she is rejected from all of these, but she has jerry-rigged deep space satellite tracking and has apparently hacked NASA.
Is this a thing now where smart people go to work for cable companies when their professional career bottoms out? Because it was the same deal with Jeff Goldblum in fucking Independence Day. Has this just become a thing?
Hang on. I will say there is a marked difference in the by and large, yes, because it's something that it's in a field they can largely gravitate towards and succeed at without really applying themselves or going out of their way all that often. In the case of Jeff Goldblum's character, it's abundantly clear he was not rejected from anything. He just didn't want to. He really didn't want to. He was. How did he say it? He was comfortable where he was. He could have done more. He knows he can do more. He just doesn't want to until he has to. That said, cable companies are a good catch-all because I imagine it's a field that everyone involved in has a loose enough degree of understanding about how it actually operates to put together a rough facsimile thereof.
No one I've ever talked to. And I've had to call quite a few customer service people in cable companies.
Okay, I mean from a presentation standpoint. Of course, if you actually call up customer service, it's actually someone in India.
I'm not even sure the person I'm calling knows...
the language?
The language, what I'm calling about, or who they work for.
Yeah, that's... Again, when I say they present a rough facsimile, it's purely for the sake of fantasy.
I do know that they will try to get me to up my package, though.
Every time. And they really love your credit card number. Anyway.
Yeah, we're going to be here all night.
So again, she has jerry-rigged deep space tracking. She sees that an object has deviated from its course in a pretty major way, defying all known laws of physics, assuming it's actually an asteroid. Makes it to the Earth. She uses the power of her smartphone and Google Maps to follow it to a specific location, goes through a quickly set up camouflage field that for some reason is not actually being manned by anyone. They just throw it up. She then follows them to the headquarters from the original Men in Black. She sneaks in, is immediately caught, and then talks her way into a position as... I just have to say this. I forget the name of the actress who plays the woman in charge of Brooklyn. I want to say Annette Bening.
Emma Thompson.
Emma Thompson, thank you. When she's kind of processing the break-in, the technician that she's talking with says in the old days we would have hired her. And Emma Thompson's a good-looking woman. She looks older than the guy saying that. Like, she was around for the old days. You pretty clearly weren't. Anyway, she gets hired. She is then assigned to the London branch of the Men in Black because Emma Thompson has, and I kid you not, I believe this is their exact, like this is the actual dialogue, a vaguely unsettling notion, and sends, in fairness, she doesn't send anyone of actual value. She sends a probationary and fully expendable recruit into this position. Tessa Thompson meets Liam Neeson, who continues to just kind of generally be awesome. We're also introduced to where Chris Hemsworth's character is currently residing, in a state of ineptitude and quasi-debauchery. They are together assigned to babysit a foreign dignitary who winds up assassinated by the ethnic breakdancers. I don't know.
The ethnic breakdancers. Wow.
Seriously.
Wow, Whitey.
Okay, would you care to describe them in a quasi-facetious way beyond that?
Not necessarily the Hive guys, or not necessarily the Hive twins.
I mean, I was waiting for the parkour scene in this movie. But instead we get breakdancing for legitimately no reason other than, hey, these are stuntmen who finally get dialogue in a movie. And they want to show off that we can do things.
Yeah, I'm sure when they were putting this together, like, you know what people like? Funny dancing.
I think they just got on set that day and were like, hey, we're going to have this scene in a club. And they were like, you know what? We know how to break dance. Let's do that. And the director and producer were hang on. And
we've already went through this. The director
stop it. They stopped throwing feces at each other long enough to say, do whatever you want.
Damn it. I was going to say, we've already established the director wasn't there. He was locked in a room somewhere.
No, I don't know. I have in my head that was shot earlier in the movie. So they're just throwing crap at each other. And they, hey, can we shoot a breakdance scene? And they both look at him and go, sure. And then resume flinging crap at each other. The foreign dignitary is killed, but he entrusts Tessa Thompson with the MacGuffin. This thing that he has, and he was going to try to give it to Chris Hemsworth, but Chris Hemsworth has changed, man. You used to be cool, bro, and now he's not, so he doesn't... So this woman he just met gets the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, sure.
So if you're keeping score, Tessa Thompson was sent to London because Emma Thompson had a vague notion that there might be a problem there. It's not defined what the problem might be. There's no mention of a mole or anything. It's just, we think we have a problem in London. Go sniff around and see what you come up with. And then the next thing we're told is one of the characters isn't like he used to be. This is supposed to be good writing that says... that is supposed to lead the audience to believe that maybe Chris Hemsworth it has been body snatched or mind controlled or is a mole of some sort. This is where the movie is going.
That's clearly the direction it at one point was meant to go. They avoid trouble by having this. I mean, in all seriousness, the Earth in the Men in Black universe is supposed to be a giant hub, a political safe zone, and if the son of if a foreign prince is murdered in a different country, bad things happen. If the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is violently murdered on a visit to Iran, I mean, he shouldn't be in Iran anyway. No one should. But if that happens, they're going to war.
Right.
There's no two ways about that. So they circumvent this by throwing out the hypothesis that, well, if the only people who knew where he was going to be were his own personal security and us, we might have a mole problem. And this is immediately bought by most of the people by most characters. They begin investigating what and how this assassination happened. This leads Hemsworth and Thompson to Marrakesh, where they find Pawnee, the tiny alien whose entire civilization is built around their social hierarchy seems constructed on chess pieces. I don't know how this is a thing. Anyway, he escapes the mass slaughter of his people that was perpetrated by our Wonder Twins, form of Space Cloud, and swears fealty to Tessa Thompson, and is then drug along for comedic relief. They are ambushed in Marrakesh by both the Wonder Twins and the Men in Black forces, who now believe that Chris Hemsworth is the mole. They escape. They discover that this thing that they were given by the dying foreign dignitary is in fact a weapon that has harnessed the power of a star,
which they then shoot in the desert and don't crack the planet in half.
Well, they do set it on the very, very lowest setting.
Power of a star.
Hey, look, if Captain Marvel can avoid cracking the planet on impact, I'm not going to complain about the settings for this being very, very fine-tuned. I'm just not.
Okie doke. Can I say it's really stupid?
It is.
Not everything has to be powered with the thing that provides sunlight to the Earth.
I mean, again, like, stars and their existence are what give life possibility based on all our known laws of everything. That's then stolen by a talking beard and taken to intergalactic arms dealer who's just coincidentally enough Chris Hemsworth's ex. They then have to steal it back. Things go badly until it turns out that her bodyguard was the fluffy little murder machine that Tessa Thompson saved in the opening scene. They steal it back. They return it to the Men in Black. At which point they all they are then confronted again by Wonder Twins, form of the Kotari Nebula. They are this time defeated by the Men in Black and destroyed. Fair enough. They turn the weapon over. They are celebrated. They then get their heads together and in classic crappy writing fashion go, there's a lot of plot holes floating around here. The only thing that makes them make sense is if it was really the guy in charge all along. Well, sure, because clearly the writing for this can't be that bad. It must be the guy in charge. It is, in fact, Liam Neeson's character who was infected by the Hive those many years ago in 2016. He then neuralized Chris Hemsworth's character, and he's now going to take this weapon to the Hive, because this is apparently the only weapon in the universe that actually has the potential to stop this vaguely amorphous expanding mass of totally not ripped off reality stone effects. They confront him through the power of love. Chris Hemsworth is able to, I kid you not, Chris Hemsworth is able to stop this creature's murderous rampage for just long enough for them to get back the weapon, pull Tessa Thompson out of the wormhole that exists atop the Eiffel Tower, and fire the weapon at full power through the wormhole into the Hive, thus destroying a massive intergalactic threat, and I'm sure have no actual real-world consequences to the political structure of the entire universe. Emma Thompson is then reassigned back to Tessa Thompson is then reassigned by Emma Thompson back to Brooklyn. Chris Hemsworth is promoted to temporary head of the London branch. They play hooky for a day because they like each other now. And we cut to the credits.
Hang on. It should be noted there's a line in this movie that goes something like, listen, if you're going to pimp me out to an alien, at least give me a heads up so I'm prepared. That was the day before they decided they liked each other.
That is an actual line of dialogue from the movie. I didn't stick around for the post-credit scene. Was there one?
Not that I'm aware of. I stayed a little bit.
Let me pull up the wiki.
I have it.
No, nothing is listed. Okay. All right, where do we want to talk? Where do we want to start with this turkey?
All right, let me go back to the initial point that I made. It's just a comparison. So I was watching the original Men in Black, and they made a point of saying that New York was kind of the New York branch of the Men in Black was kind of the Ellis Island for aliens, and it's not. It doesn't come across like a government investigative office so much as it comes across like the customs area of an airport. And while there are investigators, there are people, the Men in Black, They investigate things. They kind of have dual roles. They're half investigators, half probation officers, half like customs and like border patrol. They serve a lot of different functions, and so a lot of the original Men in Black is just dealing with making sure the aliens are obeying the rules and dealing with them when they do, dealing with them when they break the rules. You have the one scene where the one alien and his wife, who are supposed to stay on the island of Manhattan, leave, and they got to go figure out, well, why are you leaving? What are you doing? And then at the same time, they're investigating the issue with the bug, which is the big plot of the movie. This one seems to have forgotten that. The London office just seems like a really pretty, futuristic investigation unit. Like, I never really got the sense that, like, the first scene you see Chris Hemsworth in, he's doing like undercover work, trying to capture, trying to do something with a gangster,
and then winds up sleeping with an alien that has tentacle arms. And I mean, look, I imagine that you can have fun with suction cups, but that whole thing is never actually played off as anything other than an excuse to have Hemsworth shirtless in jeans walk across a room.
Right. It's character building. Get it? He's a cad. He doesn't play by the rules.
Mark, no. I don't drink. I am therefore not drunk enough to deal with that line.
In any case, it was one of the big differences I saw in the movie, that a lot of the aesthetic and world building appeal of the first movie was subsequently forgotten this one, and it was as if they wrote it as if to say, let's not. So we were reading before where there was talks about this was supposed to deal with immigration, and they kind of pulled a lot of that out of there. Well, they pulled a lot of what the Men in Black is supposed to be out of it as well, and just said, nah, they're kind of space cops. They're just space cops.
Yeah,
okay?
I agree with you about, the first one is largely, they spend more time with just the business of like alien administration.
Yeah.
Rather than, they have to be armed, in case things go bad. But I agree with you. I was genuinely kind of waiting in the first one for a scene where Tommy Lee Jones mentions, I've only discharged my weapon, 4 times in a 60-year career kind of thing. So we're ready for this, but it doesn't happen all the time.
I shared that with my wife, as we were watching the first one, and she was like, well, consider this. They do make it a point to say that New York is sort of the central hub for aliens coming in and out, and it's, and once you're in, though, if you have the ability to, obviously some go to Marrakesh, some go to London, some people, aliens go everywhere. They're all over the earth. And New York may be dealing with the customs and the travel arrangements of these aliens and whatnot. But some of the other branches around the world, the Africa branch, the London branch, etc., may be more investigative. That would be true to real life agencies as well.
Sure, would have been nice if they mentioned that.
But that's where I was going. I'm like, okay, but then explain that. We have a problem.
I would be perfectly acceptable if if she arrives in London and one of the things that she's done is done during orientation is, there's a lot less intergalactic traffic that comes through here, so we get to focus more on X, Y, and Z. I hope you like paperwork, because there's not a whole lot of need for it.
I know you hate the movie, but there was more world building and explanation of what this is in the Willy Wonka scene in Thor Ragnarok. And I would have settled for that.
That's true.
I would have.
Again, I hate that. You're right. I hate that movie. I hate that scene. But you are correct in that it does actually achieve the purpose it sets for itself.
Right. So, you don't have to do just a verbal exposition diarrhea of the mouth kind of a thing. But when Emma Thompson says we have a problem in London, have her saying, what does the London branch do? Have her talk about, she can even say, like, for a long period of time, the Men in Black were mostly concerned with making sure the aliens concealed themselves, and we're just tracking the comings and goings of them. We didn't want to lose them. We're like the traditional immigration department, but with aliens. But, in the last couple of years, there's been a real hard-on for having aliens on this planet, and we're doing more police work than we ever have before, and that's the kind of agents we're recruiting. And maybe that was in the original script. It's not in this one. And
that would be one of the scenes that should have been kept.
Yeah. I don't know why you gut that scene. Unless you're gutting it for time, because we need more time with Chris Hemsworth abs. But whatever.
Which they don't even then spend on Chris Hemsworth's abs, in all fairness.
A lot of slow walking, though. That was a gag that went on forever.
Ugh.
Other than that, there's some stuff that gets a little, I don't know if convoluted is the right word. I missed the whole explanation of what it was Chris Hemsworth was supposed to be doing with, what's the character's name?
Describe the character and I will tell you the name.
The one that dies, Vungus.
He's just babysitting him. He's a foreign diplomat. Again, he's, a foreign royalty kind of thing. And there are, because I think Liam Neeson actually says it, the society that he comes from is not down with certain activities and indulgences. So he comes to, Earth, where it's a party and no one's wearing any pants.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that could have been fleshed out a little bit more. Like, you get it with some of the character interactions, but I don't know. I felt like we were in such a rush to kind of get to certain places in the movie that a lot of the world building got entirely sacrificed. A lot of the plot got sacrificed, quite frankly.
I would say that there are plot holes in this movie, but is it really a hole if all you have is like a loose string bridge over a giant chasm?
I said before that now reading that Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth had dialogue written for them professionally outside of what was originally in the script because there was a lot of confusion on set. Well, that affected the performances. Let me kind of talk about that for a minute. Chris Hemsworth's a fine actor.
Hang on. Only if I first get to mention that for someone who was ostensibly born and raised in Brooklyn, Tessa Thompson has the most Midwestern of accents.
She is really trying to fight her natural accent. I'll tell you that much.
So Charlie Hunnam looked to have less trouble fighting his accent in Pacific Rim, which was a battle he lost on occasion, than she does in this movie. Again, she doesn't even try an actual Brooklyn accent. At no point in this movie is that even loosely on the table.
No. I mean, she didn't need to sound like, Arthur Fonzarelli or anything like that, but at least try to sound like a New Yorker. You're right. She sounded like she was from fucking Missouri. So
I would have gone with Nebraska.
Flat America. That's where she was from.
Heck, where I'm from, which is not flat, but yeah, we all kind of sound like that too.
So Chris Hemsworth, and he's not a bad actor. Tessa Thompson, struggling with an accent, not a bad actress, obviously, but both of them, they had chemistry in Thor Ragnarok, and it's the only other thing I can compare it to. It's so I can't. My initial reaction was, wow, they had no chemistry in this movie, which is a weird thing because their chemistry was fine in Ragnarok. I thought they fit well together. I thought they fit well together in the one scene they had in Endgame. I thought, they actually... I would like to see more of Thor and Valkyrie because I like those two actors together. So you would think they would have been a natural fit in this. They don't. They're almost clashing in their performances. Chris Hemsworth is doing... Chris Hemsworth is doing the character that a certain segment of the Hollywood population absolutely hates. He's doing the toxic male thing, and she's doing the Mary Sue thing. Really, there's nothing.
No, that's very true. Her character does not
flaws.
have a flaw,
no,
and is able to do all kinds of things just because the plot says so.
Yeah. So they're clashing through a lot of things. They don't like. I'm not interested in them together. I'm not interested in what they're doing. As an action movie with some sci-fi fantasy elements to it, it was fine. I kind of had the same reaction to it as I have with when we talk about like the John Wick type of movies or the Jason Bourne type of movies, which is just like action and it's, if I don't see anything interesting about it, I tend to just sort of zone out, and that's what happened here. There's nothing memorable about this movie. Like I'm gonna go ahead and bring up the same argument I brought up for Dark Phoenix. If you're one of these people who's not retaining a lot of information from previous movies, or you don't go to the movies that often, but you happen to have watched this and you just needed to be entertained for 2 hours, it's fine. It's not a good movie. It's moderately entertaining for the 2-hour run length that it occupies, and then utterly forgettable.
I would like to point out a few of the... And I saw an interesting kind of thought experiment done recently, and it just kind of raised the question of why so often when we talk about craft like this, when we talk about film review or television or whatever, more specifically the visual mediums, why so much attention is paid to writing. When there are movies, not this movie, but there are movies where the writing, and Baron, I think this is a valid point, it's an interesting one, where the writing is intentionally secondary to spectacle. If I might throw a few examples out there, Avatar is a terrible movie if all you do is look at the writing. If you read the novelization or just read the screenplay of that movie, you wonder how it got greenlit. You really do. Like it's a lot of nothing. But Avatar is designed as spectacle, and as spectacle, it's pretty great. I don't care for not one of my favorite movies. I don't especially care for it all that much.
Dude, people wanted to live there. That's why it's the highest grossing movie in the history of movies.
Yes. Well,
you know what I mean.
I do, and I'm not going to debate the semantics with you, hence the kind of, okay, yeah, let's just move on. But, yeah, again, it's designed as spectacle, so how fair is it to critique the writing when the writing is clearly there only to service the spectacle, and the spectacle is very successful? And I think it's a valid point. Now, the writing is kind of how believe it or not, people who think critically about these things, I think the writing is kind of the first layer that we encounter the movie on, rather than actually the visuals. Although if the visuals are really bad, happy to talk about that. You and I both have. We've talked about failures of technology, failures of application, failures of editing, even more so than writing in a lot of cases. Just the editing is just bad. So I bring that up specifically because you and I do on occasion. You and I try to do more than just harp on the writers for sucking. So one of the reasons I don't feel bad harping on the writing of this movie in particular is, even if we were to talk about it as spectacle, it's a terrible spectacle. If I'm going to point again, there's things about Avatar as far as the writing goes that are just bad, but there's also a significant degree of it's not the writing in this is secondary. Who cares? It's clearly effective on its primary level of intended success.
Let's put it this way: a movie that features out of this world creatures and state-of-the-art action should not be utterly forgettable. If it is, you have failed in your mission. You have failed this city.
In pretty significant ways. Now, okay, so I don't mind bringing up the writing here because it's a terrible spectacle, if that's what it's going for. The writing is really what this movie is leaning on as far as how it interacts with the audience. So I'm going to talk about how stupid it is. Tessa Thompson's character motivation is she wants to know how it all works, which is then replayed as she is falling through a wormhole towards the hive, which looks vaguely like cancer cells. I don't say that just to... and I'm not saying that because of you. Like, you look at the way they represent that thing on film, like, it looks like, again, like a red pixelated cancer MRI. And I mean that as an absolute negative. In the not the finale, but in like the wrap-up portion, Emma Thompson repeats that line, well, now you know how it all works. Like, wait. No.
None of that made any... That I feel like was written for, when the movie was radically different, and then no one cut it when it no longer made sense.
And she also says, and I'm sure you've now intuited that there's a price to be paid. Like, no, okay, what?
Yeah.
None of what you just said makes sense in the current context. None of it. And then she and Chris Hemsworth share a soulful glance apropos of, like, shared trauma, I suppose, is the closest thing we can come to why these people don't just, like, shake hands and part ways.
My interpretation of that is that you were made to believe as an audience member that these two had somehow fallen in love like Han Solo and Princess Leia, and that the sacrifice being made is like Jedi. The job comes before everything else. You may not love, you may not marry, you must be a monk for the rest of your life. And so even though you have found this love, the price to pay for being a Men in Black is you will not know love. You will only know the job, which is fine. But then someone should have spent part of the last 2 hours telling us that,
which in this case doesn't even make sense. Like the logic behind the Jedi being celibate basically was, well, we don't trust you people with emotions. Inflaming your passions leads to the dark side. So even when fighting for, what should be passionate things, you must be dispassionate. And smiling, which is the only explanation I have for Hayden Christensen's performance in those movies, by the way, is the Jedi hate emotion. Well, good, I can be flat. But, again, there's elements that, the Men in Black are not supposed to leave a footprint on the Earth because, people don't know about what's going on, and for reasons that are beautifully that's some of my favorite stuff from Tommy Lee Jones in the first movie when Will Smith asks him, okay, so what's up here, why not tell people, and his response is perfect.
Yeah.
A person is smart, people are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. But again, that argument that doesn't hold up under the logic of, well, we actually both do work for this agency. We're both in the know.
Right.
Like, okay, you don't want to have much of a footprint outside of, the Men in Black reality. Okay, that makes sense. Boy, there's this other agent I'm sure hot for. I don't know. I might let slip the secret that aliens exist in the universe and are living amongst us. Oh, wait.
Let me just interject something here. Because now that we're talking about it, I really feel, I'm like aggravated by this point. And I guess just because when I watched it the first time, I was like, I just want to get out of the theater and move on with my day. They did zero in this movie to show that there was a love or a bond forming between Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth. Zero.
The closest you get is they stop being bitchy to each other while fixing the space bike.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, apparently returning to baseline civility now equates to, boy, I want you in my pants. Look, if I operated that way, my life would be even weirder than it is, and my social interaction would be even weirder.
You would have all the STDs if that were the case.
No, because I'm like, I'm like the only guy who's barely civil to people. But I agree with you. Like, there is nothing there.
No.
Like there's not even like, I hate to say subtext, but you mentioned in Thor Ragnarok that they were on screen together and there was something there. If I might reference a television show, Karen Page and Frank Castle on screen together.
Oh my God, we've talked about that.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up.
That's some steamy shit right there. But I'll go you one better.
There's not even that. There's not even the like unspoken. They just are on screen together, and everyone with even the barest social competence, me. Well, I'm not the barest, but there's people on the spectrum who can look at this and go, "Oh, there's something there."
In The Empire Strikes Back, you had it starts out with Princess Leia and Han Solo kind of bitching at each other, but even at that, you have Han Solo kind of flirting with her, and she's like, "Huh!" and she's clutching her pearls through a lot of the stuff on Hoth.
There's a better thing than pearl clutching that I could reference, but I don't. It's not a reference you would get. So
moving on. So there's that. Then there's when they're in the asteroid, which turns out to be a space worm, and they're holding hands, and he's whispering to her, and she's whispering to him, and they almost kiss, and C-3PO interrupts them. So that
they share moments together,
right.
That actually show both sides of the relationship.
Stop it! My hands are dirty. My hands are dirty too. What's the problem? Blah blah yakety schmackety. He's a smooth operator, that Han Solo, and she is trying to resist him because she's a proper princess and he's a scoundrel. But you could see the sexual tension building between them, and not just because they slept together on the set of Star Wars. Whole of the story there. And so when you get to the point where she's like, "I love you," and he goes, "I know," it's such a powerful thing, not just because that's a cool as fuck line, but also because they've been leading up to it the entire movie. That was the payoff to everything you saw before it. Again, none of that in this movie. There's nothing that happens between O and H, or whatever the fuck her name is.
I think it's M and H.
M and H, no. O is, it's O and H.
No, she's M.
All right, hang on. You're right, H and M. H and M.
I will say, though, just very briefly, there's a scene when after she is indoctrinated, if she's introduced to the world, and Liam Neeson just calls her M on occasion. It just made me sad we never got Liam Neeson as James Bond.
So yeah, so you can continue with your point, but I wanted to bring up the fact that it's a very lazy script, and this is just one of the shining examples of they're insinuating a love story here that they're trying to pay off with that with that last bit of, well, now you know how it all works and what great sacrifices there are to this job. And it's like, but you set up none of that through this movie. And oh, by the way, when she's going through when she's going through the portal and she's going to end up on the Hive planet.
Well, the Hive is coming through, and she encounters a Hive.
Either way, I'm not sure I'm reflecting back on that moment of my life. I'm probably screaming for my life because I'm about to die. That whole thing was so stupid.
Yeah, that was really badly handled. So here's, I think, my biggest... This is one of those things that's just so stupid I couldn't get my head around it. And even in this movie, that's saying something. So, Liam... one of the big plot points around... One of the big mysteries is not only who is the mole, but once it's revealed to be Liam Neeson, what exactly happened? And... Because their response to this is, well, that heroic thing that we have immortalized you on our walls in really wispy, undefined paintings is, maybe you didn't win. Maybe you didn't stop the Hive. And the closest analog I have for the Hive, as represented loosely in this movie, is like the Borg. And if you don't stop the Borg, they don't assimilate one person and say, okay, now you're going to just hang out on this planet, and at some indeterminate point in the future, we will arrive and assimilate everything. Not this current point that we absolutely could, because we have clearly bested the defenses, we've got behind enemy lines, and have free reign to attack this planet and take it over. But no, we're not going to do that. It made no sense. And then it was never explained. Moreover, they take over Liam Neeson, but just neuralize Chris Hemsworth. I fail to see why 2 sleeper agents is not better than 1 if, for whatever reason, you decide you want sleeper agents.
Well, here's the other thing. If you for whatever the purposes you want of keeping him pure and unhived, okay, but then you have to tell us why. What was at no point does Liam Neeson ever say when he's revealed to be the Hive, well, our plan here was and I needed you to be your normal human self and easily manipulated to get you to do XYZ. That never happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The closest thing they come to explaining it is, oh, you needed me alive to perpetuate the lie. If that's the actual look, I'm going to do 2 things here. 1, stupid writing. Okay, and don't get me wrong. There are ways you can write a scenario where you want someone perpetuating your cover story who is genuinely in the dark. That can be valuable. Okay, fair enough. I know that can be valuable. That is not the scenario you set up here.
No,
so that's a massive failure of writing.
So if they done something like all this time that I was here, I was setting up for the inevitable Hive invasion, and I needed him to go bumbling through things so that I could. So I essentially needed him to cover me, so I covered him.
Yeah, there's not even the discussion of I needed a fall guy, and
right.
and because we were both here, I could always point the finger at you if they were on to me. That's not even there. Not even set up as a fall guy. So again, failure on the writing, and if that's the actual reason this intergalactic hive mind entity that has conquered other planets to the point that it has its own section of the galaxy just isolated like this is Hive territory, is so profoundly stupid as to look at that scenario and go, you know what, yeah, just the one. I don't know what to tell you. Their success makes no sense at that point. They are so profoundly stupid, they can't actually be a threat. It just makes no sense. And, oh god, the entire subplot with, his 3-armed ex. I mean, okay, I understand that in some version of this script, all the talk of you've changed is meant to lead to some paranoia about which side H is on. I do. That's not the version of this movie we got. So if you're going to leave all that dialogue in, there has to be some kind of payoff. All we're presented with is he's a changed man. I mean, is it just that he was neuralized? The one time? Did that profoundly alter his personality to the point that someone he considers a friend and has done debauched things with is now like, yeah, I don't know you anymore, bro? It's just badly written. Right. And if it's not badly written, it's badly edited.
You've changed in what way? How? Because here's the thing. You do that with Will Smith's character in the 3rd movie. You still, that goes back to what I said about Dark Phoenix. it's utterly lazy and bad writing to rely on a previous film and be like, yeah, just watch the previous films and you'll understand what this character's like. But at least there was a previous movie to rely on, if you absolutely had to. In this particular case, A, there isn't that, and B, no, I'm sorry, that's just it. Like, you don't tell us anything about this character or how he's different from what he used to be, so you're just going, he changed, and the audience is going, but how? Why is he different? So far, everything we've seen out of this character has been consistent. The one scene we saw him in on the Eiffel Tower wasn't radically different from anything we had seen up to that point.
He was marginally more competent at his job in that scene, but that's it. That is the only difference in character, is that, he was a little bit better at his job. He's a lazy...
I don't even know how you're coming up with that. In that scene, he rides an elevator, gets blasted down an elevator shaft, comes back up again, and the war is won.
Well, lost as such, but he at least seems to care a little bit about procedures in that movie. He's and even again, I'm reaching. Like I'm putting more thought into this than the writers did.
Yeah, I'm like, let's just go with nope and then move on.
Again, unless you're really like detail oriented like I am, you don't notice a difference. And even I'm stretching for it. So I can't talk all that well about the special effects for this movie.
They look really cartoony.
The final form of Liam Neeson as the Hive member is
embarrassing.
Ugh. It's not pixelated, but that's about the only positive thing I can say. I'm pretty sure that alien that the alien who sneaks his way into New York to see his kids and is thus the impetus for Tessa Thompson being able to find them was just a guy in a fat suit.
That was a used beast suit.
Yeah, that was so not a good look. I can't say almost anything good about any part of this movie, really. So unless there's something else on the craft side of things that you want to touch on or anything else, if there's anything else that we left unremarked that you want to touch on, we can kind of move on from this, I feel.
I'll just say this. If you're new, if you've just joined us on Podcoin and you're listening to this for the first time, because right now we're a featured podcast, and so you get like extra points.
Wait, we got featured?
Yeah, that's why our numbers went up.
So you got are they actually sponsoring us now or not?
They are not. No.
Okay.
The way Podcoin works is they just sort of grab a bunch of RSS feeds, and that if you happen to notice yours is on there, you can claim it. And then if you do, because you're helping to perpetuate the existence of Podcoin, they reward you by making you a featured podcast for like 2 weeks. And people listen to your show. I think they get extra points or whatever. So there's incentive to listen to the podcast on Podcoin with a little fire thing on it, which is currently us. Anyway, so for those of you who have just joined us on Podcoin and you listen to our Dark Phoenix review and all of that, go back in the archives and go check out our Dumbo review, because the difference between Dumbo and this one was they're both bad, but I was mad at Disney for Dumbo, for taking that movie and treating it with the disrespect that they did. I'm not mad about this one. That's the major difference. Like, there's like two kinds of reviews where Rob and I are both like, this sucks. There's the ones where I'm like, it sucks, but who cares? Which is where this one lies. I don't particularly have any great affection for this IP. It's fine. I enjoyed it during its first run, at least the first two movies.
Oh, come on. 2 sucks, but 3 is good just for watching Josh Brolin be young Tommy Lee Jones.
It had absolutely zero impact on me. I'm thinking I don't like it because I don't remember it.
Again, that's the best thing about 3, but when Will Smith goes back in time and meets Josh Brolin playing, Tommy Lee Jones from 20 years ago, a lot of credit to Brolin for that performance, basically being Tommy Lee Jones's version of that character, because he has the speaking patterns, the voice, he has everything nailed. It's kind of eerie in some cases.
But Dumbo, that was one of those rare shows that Robert and I have done where there's a lot of screaming, but it's screaming together at Disney for ruining a classic picture. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If you're new to the show, if you want to get a sort of a different feel for how we do this, go check out the Dumbo review, and then go deep into the archives and check out our Age of Extinction review, where you can see Robert and I get into a knockdown drag-out fight. That one or Ant-Man and the Wasp. Either one's really good for me and him screaming at one another.
And one of those I expect, like you and I both went into Age of Extinction going, okay, we had our full camps to prepare. We're head down. We touched gloves in the center of the octagon. Like, okay, we're gonna throw down on this one. Like, we both knew what was up.
Yep.
Ant-Man and the Wasp. We talked a little bit about it before and just went, yeah, right. And then we get in there, and then at some point, I said this is just such a nothing movie, and you reacted like I'd insulted your wife.
Yeah, that was. So if you're playing wrestling if you're playing Radulich and Broadcasting Bingo, you can mark the wrestling reference. Ant-Man and the Wasp was kind of the episode of The Barber Shop where Shawn Michaels kicked Marty Jannetty through the mirrored window.
At least that had been set up.
Well, Marty didn't know that at the time.
Well, no, like they
teased he didn't know it.
Even then, they teased that they were having stresses and troubles, and you and I went into that. They're on the barbershop initially to kind of squash the beef between the two of them.
Right.
This was just like,
tell you what,
Seth Rollins smacking the Shield in the back with a chair.
Yeah, okay. Actually, that's the exact one I was going to go to. It was like, all right, you don't like that one, fine. How about when Seth Rollins turned on the Shield,
or Dean Ambrose turned on Seth Rollins, or
wrestling turned on its fans. All right.
That happened a long time ago. Oh, sorry. The last thing I want to say about this, and
okay,
this is not what the point I'm going to make here has very little to do with the craft of the movie, but you and I mentioned a little bit offline and a little bit at the start of the show that the original Men in Black is carried largely by Will Smith's affability, his box office cachet, his interactions with Tommy Lee Jones. Let's be fair. That relationship has to work for that movie to be even remotely successful. The fact that it doesn't in this movie is a significant portion of why it sucks so much. But there was also a little bit of a kind of like contemporary cultural thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I were to tell you, Mark, that I have an idea for an ongoing franchise, part of the appeal of which will be a look behind the metaphorical curtain at a fantastical world through the eyes of people both learning about it and trying to maintain its secrecy in the face of both the mundane and the spectacular, there's a significantly more impactful franchise that very well describes. And I'm not sure if Men in Black is even on like a meta level positioned to succeed in a post Harry Potter world.
All right. With that being said, here come the money.
No, it doesn't.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money,
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
Like for a second there, I'm like, what's he talking about? That's the next. Oh, that's right. This didn't make any.
That would be the joke.
All right. On a budget of between 94 and 110 million, according to the Wikipedia page.
High end.
This thing, well, first, it was the number one movie of the weekend. Secret Life of Pets dropped from 1 to 2. It was the previous weekend winner. Aladdin stayed at number 3, and more on that later because Aladdin's apparently making bank. Rocket Man, which I also saw this past weekend, I was telling my wife, I'm like, damn it, I wish I hadn't committed to Men in Black because I would have much rather talked about Rocket Man. It was much more to say about it.
Wait, an actual musician biopic that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, Rocket Man was really good.
Apparently, I haven't seen it yet, but I know people that have, and I've had a bit of this conversation. Apparently, the fact that they tell it, there's significant portions of it from his perspective as what he felt he was experiencing rather than what he was actually experiencing, especially given how many drugs he was on. And a lot of the kind of, I think my dad's line about it was, if you're familiar with a lot of the kind of, the AA and the NA, just kind of steps and sort of general ethos when dealing with addiction and whatnot, you can actually track his levels of debauchery and abuse and self-abuse through that lens, because so much of the autobiography this is based on came about when he was in the process of getting clean.
All I know is that his father was a shit to him, according to this movie, and I went home and made sure I hugged my children and told them I loved them. That's how that was what a profound effect this had on me. So that jumped actually from 5 to 4 over the weekend, even though it made less money this weekend than the previous weekend, believe it or not. Dark Phoenix dropped from 2 to 5. Who would have thunk it? Shaft debuted at number 6.
I'm surprised it didn't fall further.
Godzilla dropped from 4 to 7. John Wick 7 to 8. Late Night opened in apparently 2,000 some odd more theaters, so it had a huge jump from 17 to 9.
It still barely cracked the top 10.
Avengers Endgame. Come on, people. People. Come on. We're like 40 million away from beating Avatar.
I told you it's not going to do it. Make peace.
Not until it's on Disney Plus. Avengers Endgame dropped from 8 to 10. Dropped from 6 to 11. The Dead Don't Die debuted at number 12.
Oh, I need to see if that's playing around here. I so want to see that movie.
Pokemon dropped from 9 to 13. Booksmart 10 to 14. A Dog's Journey 11 to 15. The Last Black Man in San Francisco rose 2 points, 18 to 16. Bharat 12 to 17. Brightburn 13 to 18. Biggest Little Farm 15 to 19. And apparently this is a Pavarotti film out there.
Okay, cool.
Then. Rose from 25 to 20. As I was saying, Men in Black on the $94 to $110 million budget is currently sitting at 106 worldwide. They are saying that this might actually lose more money than Dark Phoenix. That's just fucking hilarious.
I have a really hard time believing that, given just how many reshoots and how much marketing went into Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm just kind of quoting some headlines that I saw. But we'll have to talk later on this year about the biggest losers. There's a Wikipedia page that tracks it, so I will be curious to see where we stand with box office bombs this year.
There have been some hefty ones.
Indeed. All right, so worldwide box office right now, obviously Avengers and Captain Marvel in the 1 and 2 spot. But here's what finally jumped to number 3 and beat out the Chinese Chinaman movie, The Wandering Earth. Aladdin, which is closing in on $1 billion. Can you believe it? $729 million so far.
You know, we said it at the time that, well, at least I think we did. It's a movie that will do domestically okay, but is also, in a lot of respects, very well positioned, especially given, this is one of those things about the original Disney animated classics. Disney went out of their way to get dubs for all of that. Yeah, and anyone who took, a foreign language in high school, you all had at least one day when it was, here, let's watch X Disney movie in whatever language we're studying. I mean, seeing, The Hunchback of Notre Dame in French is, because that's, where the frickin' movie is set.
C'est magnifique.
I mean, it's not bad. But the point being, they went out of their way when a lot of these were just being released originally released into the home movie market to make them as accessible as possible around the world. Again, there's a dub for these movies in, probably all of the major languages. So when we start getting these reimaginings of them, they're also still very well positioned internationally. If for no other reason than because a lot of the people, our age, experienced them their first time through without having to read subtitles. So, and Aladdin is also a property that is, again, worldwide loved, in some respects more so than it is just purely domestically. So it's doing. We saw the original domestic returns and we're a little bit like, all right, it might peter out at the 500 to 600 million mark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then there's a few international markets that it seems to have hit rather big in. So kudos.
Yep, it's currently 463 overseas, 266 in the U.S. So, look, maybe it just crosses over the billion. I think it's going to peter. I'm going to have to rearrange my adjustments here. Might rearrange my adjustments. I'm going to have to adjust my my predictions. Probably peters out between 8 and 9. I doubt it crosses a billion. I thought that at one time, and then I was like, no, less. Now I'm thinking almost, maybe.
If it gets there, it won't be much over. I don't think we're not looking at even like a 1.3. I think,
no.
But
it
might get over, but it'll just get over.
Yeah, I don't think it overtakes Captain Marvel.
No, that's deeply unlikely. Lion King and or Toy Story will.
Yeah, The Wandering Earth is drop down to number 4. How to Train Your Dragon is still in the top 5.
Still chugging along.
And the only movie Universal has in the top 10. Remember when Universal was the thing? Come on, make some more Jurassic Park movies.
Or don't.
Detective Pikachu is number 6 at 420. Alita Battle Angel, which made nothing in the United States and all the monies overseas, I believe is also slated possibly for a sequel. What's definitely slated for a sequel is the number 8 movie, Shazam. I actually confirmed that today. Shazam is slated for a sequel, and they are, I think, in pre-production on Black Adam. Dumbo still in the top 10 with the.
Did you see the idiocy that was? I think it was Kevin Feige talked about what character he thinks The Rock should play in the MCU.
No.
He said he should play himself.
No.
Because he's the best version of himself.
I think Kevin Feige just doesn't want The Rock in a Marvel movie and said something politically correct.
It might have been Feige. It might have been the Russo brothers. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. But which is just the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want The Rock, you can actually kind of say in a very tactful manner, he's a very busy guy, and he's right now slated to star in a DC movie. We're not saying it can't happen, but it seems unlikely at this point.
Here's the problem. They have the perfect character for them. I just don't know if they want to do anything with him. He should play Wonder Man.
He could.
He would be an awesome Wonder Man.
That or if for whatever reason you're not going to actually pull the trigger on Nathan Fillion as Booster Gold.
Well, again, not a Marvel character.
Really?
Booster Gold? No.
Am I confusing him with? I must be then. My mistake.
Yep.
Look, there's a lot of those minor ancillary characters who I can't keep straight which property they belong to.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters is at number 10 with 343. And rounding out the top 20, John Wick, Us, Glass, Dark Phoenix, Lego 2, Secret of Pets 2, Escape Room, Rocket Man, The Upside, and The Curse of La Llorona. Men in Black hit the top, is in the top 25 at 25. It's sitting between Pet Sematary and 5 Feet Apart. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, good is right.
That is not good.
So yeah, there's no hope. There's no hope for Men in Black. Next week, this weekend is Toy Story. Then there's a week off unless you're a big Beatles fan or you're into Indian actors, in which case everyone's going to go see Yesterday, and everyone else will go see Toy Story if they didn't see it in the first weekend. And then after that is Spider-Man, then Crawl, then The Lion King, and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So yeah, nobody is going to see Men in Black. I guarantee you it takes over a 50% drop in the second weekend. This thing probably peters out at about 200 million, and Sony just forgets about it for the next 10 years. Try again in 10 years, Sony, if you haven't been bought by Disney by then.
Yeah, they've totally been bought by Disney by then.
I was talking about that with my father-in-law. He was like, if Disney's not careful, they're going to end up getting themselves into a monopoly issue. And I said, it's not their fault. These studios can't fucking get their businesses together, and they make themselves eligible to be bought by Disney.
That's true.
All right, let's move on to our third part of the show.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
By the way, there were some really weird trailers before Men in Black. One of them was for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, I got that one.
Which is fine, except if you have an 8-year-old with you and she looks at you and says, "I don't understand what I just saw," and I'm like, "Don't worry about it. You're not going to go see that movie."
It's not for you, Lily. Don't worry about it.
Men in Black. It was so bad, even my son said, "Nope, fuck this. I'll go hang out with Ma."
I assume at that point you smacked him for profanity, but
He said, Ma, take me to Chuck E. Cheese."
Hey, Ma, how about some cookies? No dice. This ain't over. Seriously, seriously, Bronson, Missouri gets so much... That gag has gotten so much traction in my life.
I'm going to start with this one just because, like, I'm going to read it, and then you'll understand why I want to strangle this particular reviewer. James Baradinelli of Real Views. Whoever spearheaded this half-hearted resurrection should be fitted with a golden parachute. Why? Should be sacked? Sure. Should be canned? Okay. Should be flogged? No need to get violent, but I understand where you're going. Golden parachute? Why would you want to reward this person?
I don't know if he just couldn't quite connect. You know, maybe we should... I feel like there's a better metaphor in there. Like, that despite the fact that this metaphor has been actively disproven, but, this person should be left holding a lead balloon.
This is going to be a mix.
Which actually does float. Mythbusters proved that. You can actually make a lead balloon float.
So this is going to be a mix of rotten and fresh reviews.
Yeah, just find the morons.
Yeah. So here's a moron for you. Matthew Rosa of Salon.com. Every so often a movie gets so thoroughly shellacked by critics when you see it and realize it's actually quite good. You can't help but feel sorry for the filmmakers. What?
Unless there is another sentence immediately following that one that goes, "This is not one of those movies," that just got cut off from your blurb, you are profoundly stupid. Although you might be in the top 10, you might be in the top percentile of people writing for Salon.
Inku Kang of Slate. It's unfair to expect the franchise launching chemistry between Smith and Jones, but the mere adequacy of Hemsworth and Thompson disappoints nonetheless.
The hell it isn't. All right, look. You're going to reboot this franchise. Yeah, you know what? I expect your leads to have chemistry to the point that they can carry some of the weaker elements of the movie. Again, maybe I don't necessarily have to expect honestly, the fact that Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones never did anything else together kind of baffles me because they play off each other so well. But again, maybe we don't get that level. Maybe we don't get, Robert Redford and Paul Newman. But I do in your movie that is deliberately set up to be a buddy X movie. Again, buddy cop, buddy action movie, buddy whatever. Yeah, again, we have another movie coming up later that I expect a lot of chemistry between Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham. And you know what? I don't think it's an unfair expectation because so much of the movie is built around that relationship. Yeah, I expect something better than loosely adequate, and I do not even believe they rise to loosely adequate, given what they should be, given that they're supposed to be carrying the movie.
Daniel M. Kimmel of New England Movies Weekly. If there's a reason to see this, it may be to watch Hemsworth continue his emergence as more than a beefcake, but a genuinely funny performer.
Okay, let me start with this. I agree with the premise. I agree that, look, Chris Hemsworth is, we've mentioned it, he's a talented actor, and he's a genuinely funny comedic actor. Like, there's a lot of, like stand-ups who go into movies who can't quite get the same magic. There's a lot of dramatic actors who can't really do the comedy thing. Chris Hemsworth is a genuinely funny comedic actor. When he puts on the comedy hat, that is a genuinely funny human being.
I thought he was funnier in Ghostbusters than this.
He was. Well, the writing in Ghostbusters was marginally better. Or the people doing the improvisation and allowing Hemsworth to improv. Like, I don't know, maybe they just committed more to the improv in that movie. Or he was told, okay, you're improving a gag for this scene rather than having to improv lines of dialogue designed to help carry the plot of the movie.
Susan Granger of SSG Syndicate. Come on, give it to me. Nothing?
No, I don't recognize the name.
Really? I read her every week. She's on our list of horribles.
Huh. I don't know.
Let me try again.
All right. Go ahead. Let's rewind. Take two. Do the bit.
Susan Granger of SSG Syndicate.
Ugh. Haven't they fired her yet?
Thank you. Traveling to London, Paris, and Marrakesh, which is spelled wrong.
It's actually spelled... Oh, God, that's hilarious. It's actually spelled on the screen of the movie twice.
It goes nowhere. It's frantic, floundering pop culture sci-fi.
You know what? I'm actually not going to say this is even pop culture. There's not a lot of actual references to anything. The rest of that is largely accurate, though.
Martin Thomas of Double Toasted.
Ugh.
Yeah. You see it and get neuralized. I couldn't even remember it that well. It's gone downhill successively since the first one.
Yes, the franchise has never been able to quite recapture what took place in the first movie. Fair enough. B, if you can't remember the movie, look, I accepted that Mark was in such bad health that he spent time sleeping in movies.
Not anymore. I'm on that CPAP.
Oh, give me that CPAP. Just give me a hit off the hose.
So there's a gal that I talk movies with at work, and we were talking about. She finally saw Detective Pikachu, and she's quite young, so she was going on and on and on about her love of Pokemon, and she was telling me about like the animated movies and what the significance of Me Too and Mewtwo or whatever the fuck the name of the art.
Okay, stop. Do not, please, equate Mewtwo with a stupid hashtag.
Mewtwo, sorry. That was an actual mispronunciation. That wasn't my usual thing.
Okay,
anyway,
fair enough.
She's talking about the significance of Mewtwo. And I blurted out, I was like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. All I know is I did a review with two people who are younger than I am by about 10 years, and came up on Pokemon. I was too old when that started. And even as an adult, I didn't like it. I didn't like Magic. I didn't do any of that stuff. Magic the Gathering, for those that don't know. But I said, so when they referred to me as a Jigglypuff, because I'm constantly trying to talk about my CPAP machine, I have no idea what in the hell they're talking about. And she goes, "Oh, you're a Jigglypuff?" She's like, it's not bad. And I'm like, okay, I'm praying someone tries to kill themselves in the jail and gets me to, have to go back to work. Anyway.
Hey, look, better the Jigglypuff than the Snorlax. Snorlax is more useful as a Pokemon, but is also very famous for just falling asleep in the middle of intersections and just being so dense that it can't physically be moved and has to be woken up with bad music.
Speaking of dense, Kimberly Pierce of Geek Girl Authority. This is a summer movie in every way possible.
Wow. That's a sentence. I mean, it is technically a sentence, but that's about all I can say about it.
Chelsea Steiner of the Mary Sue.
Well, that should have a lot to talk about with this movie.
The franchise and its stars deserved better than this disappointing outing.
Shut up. Okay, look. I will not say they deserved better, because you sign on the script, you get paid, you get what you deserve. I will say that in this instance specifically, given the production problems, there's every possibility that, Chris Hemsworth, at some point in the future, when asked about this movie, will go, I signed on for this movie, and then 2 weeks before production, they handed me a completely different script. If I'd seen that script, I would not have signed on to this movie.
It's not a good sign when you can use that same particular phrasing and description for the writing of Monday Night Raw.
It's true.
Lauren Veneziano, WBAL TV, and this is a review that only my daughter would agree with. Tessa Thompson is easily the best part about this Men in Black sequel. Too bad the story and everything else wasn't stronger.
She's not.
No.
I mean, look, she's not the worst thing about the movie by any stretch of the imagination. But the notion that she's the best thing about this movie is just patently untrue. It's demonstrably inaccurate.
Yeah, she's doesn't sound like she's reading off cue cards. It's about the height of acting in this.
I mean, in some scenes. Let's not go too far here.
Let's see. God, even a lot of the fresh reviews are not great.
No one really likes this movie, it seems.
Edward Porter of the Sunday Times UK. Its internationalism provides a world tour worthy of a Bond movie, but takes us nowhere near fresh in story terms, and the newly recruited stars Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth are underused.
Good Lord. I'm not sure you can find a 5-minute stretch of this movie where one of them is not on screen. Second of all, a world tour worthy of a Bond movie, no. If you want to try and make that claim, let's talk about how Casino Royale was able to utilize going to different countries and give them some personality and represent them differently on screen. The fact that Marrakesh and Paris have the same visual qualities in this movie, okay, so we get to Marrakesh and there's the only difference that you can find is that this looks like they shot it on the sound stage that Christopher Nolan used for where were they in Inception? I forget what that same kind of North African.
Morocco?
Did they go to Morocco in that? I think so. I think you're correct. Well, Morocco's a country, not a city, but yeah, it looks like they just kind of borrowed his soundstage, and he and Christopher Nolan made more of an effort to make that seem like a real vibrant place than this one did than this movie. No, this is certainly not worthy of comparison to any of the James Bond movies that go out of their way to make every different geographical location feel different in every possible way. There's nothing similar about the scenes in is it in Singapore in Skyfall and then Scotland? There's 3 different major countries they go to. Even London and the Scottish Highlands feel different, and not just because one of them is a metropolis and the other is a very rural area. There's filmmaking techniques employed by all parties to make these different locations feel distinct. That is absolutely not true here. It's, hey, here's the Thames River and some vaguely North African architecture, but really not so much architecture as we just couldn't quite get to Tunisia, I suppose. I don't know. And then and the Eiffel Tower, because Paris.
All right. A few more of these and then we're done. By the way, this is the Getter Winfree one of these. Ready?
Please.
Tanya Lamb of Lola Lamb Chops.
Wow. That's a website.
Lola
I have
Lamb Chops.
I do have to wonder how many people erroneously click on that expecting some sort of pornographic content.
I'm not entirely convinced there isn't pornographic content on there.
I'm not clicking on the website to find out.
I also think Lola Lamb Chops was the name that Vince McMahon almost gave Bailey. Come on, that's funny.
If you say so.
All right. See, the joke there, for folks who don't know, is Vince McMahon is terrible. All right. I saved it. I didn't hate it as much as everyone else. Don't go looking for the Thompson-Hemsworth pairing in Thor Ragnarok, and you may be pleasantly surprised. But I'd leave the kids at home.
Okay.
What?
Okay. If you're going to say I'd leave the kids at home, you have to actually support that statement. That's a sentiment that is accurate at times for a variety of reasons across different movies, some of which are not always obvious. Like, okay, this is this was PG-13, I think, but
Other
there's
than the pimp line, I don't know what else about this was risque.
In this movie, there's nothing. Like, there's not an excessive amount of blood. There's not even some of the There was the running gag in the first one that Will Smith just keeps getting slimed.
Mm-hmm.
There's not even something like quasi gross out like that, as far as gross out humor. Doesn't exist in this movie. There's not an excessive amount of profanity. There's not unless you're just talking about the runtime, and boy, I think kids would be bored with this. Which, fair point. You should just say that rather than I'd leave the kids at home as some kind of open-ended, unsupported statement. Moreover, no, you're not pleasantly surprised if you forget that these two at one point had a movie where they actually shared on-screen chemistry. You're just still, it still sucks. You're not pleasantly surprised if you're divorced from the reality that these two have previously demonstrated we can share screen space and enhance each other rather than just take up blocking. No.
A few more and then we're done. Ed Whitfield of the Outre.
Oh, wow.
Everyone's dressed for a funeral. And that's the
They're
right look.
They're the men in black!
Wait, it's
You jackass!
Everyone's dressed for a funeral, and that's the right look because if we keep getting movies like this one, we'll be putting the cinematic experience in the ground. Look, you fucking tart. Right now, Disney has so many properties and so many spaces on the calendar. They alone could keep theaters afloat.
Yes, stop that. Don't put the future of the movie-going experience on this. It's not ever intended to shoulder even a fraction of that burden. Second of all, I have to say this again. The agency is the Men in Black. Of course they're dressed in black. What do you expect?
Dude, you're so mad you almost said, what the fuck?
They actually go out of their way in one scene to have Chris Hemsworth wear pink pants just to break up the color palette, and for some reason, you don't even necessarily get that. That is such a profoundly stupid argument.
All right, two more. Matt Brunson of Creative Loafing, who I hates and hates with ever-growing passion. Inoffensive piffle. The sort one can expect from a pre-programmed summer blockbuster wannabe.
I hate this man, but I'm not sure he's wrong here.
Well, it's not that I have a problem with the review. Is I want him to be kicked in the balls by a horse for using the word piffle.
Fair enough. There's so many better words you could choose.
And lastly, Marianne Johansson of Flick Philosopher.
Oh, I was hoping to dodge her this time.
Nope.
But no, she just had to sneak in there at the last minute.
And she has a really great one. This does take the cake.
There is no way she has a great anything.
She's got a great ass! I don't know that to be true.
It's probably not.
It's probably not. We don't know, though. All I can see is her witchy little face. Performs a complete charmectomy on its usually hugely charismatic stars. Leaves them to flounder about with a bizarrely inept script and actually seems to be trolling us with its, are you ready? Pseudo-feminism.
What? Hold on whoa. Just back that up just a moment. How would you define pseudo-feminism? Like, what do you expect here? I mean this in all seriousness. Is pseudo-feminism, well, there's a man on screen and he is not made to be the ass end of every joke? While there's a woman on screen, clearly we already mentioned, she's a bit of a Mary Sue to begin with. Like, what qualifies as pseudo-feminism here? They take a theoretically capable actress, put her in a leading role, which I have no problem with. Like, if part of your selling point for this movie is we have the duo of Thor and Valkyrie back together, okay, I'm down. That's perfectly acceptable. I have no issues with her in a leading role. So again, what about this is pseudo-feminism? Here's just a thought, just a minor thought. You take a female actress playing a female character, which somehow is also a quasi-controversial sentiment in and of itself these days. Thanks, Twitter.
Thank you, Twitter kids. Thanks, Twitter.
And you actually just treat her and her character the same way that every other character is treated, male or female. Because last I checked, the feminist movement was successful insofar as it pushed actual egalitarianism, which is what is represented here. She is not treated any differently than any other agent. How is that pseudo-feminism? Because last I checked, that's kind of the point of feminism. Do you want to be pandered to? Are you like an actual, misandrist? Because that seems more like what you're after here than a woman put in a position in a large budget movie and just, again, treated fairly. That's all that's happened here, but somehow this now becomes pseudo-feminism because it's not at the expense of anyone else? I don't get this.
All right, folks. Next week, Toy Story 4.
Fire that woman.
Next week, Toy Story 4. Alexis Hannah will be back to join us for that one, as she is our animation scream queen. And the week after that, it's hard to say. I don't know where in the world I'll be on July 2nd. I don't, if I might still be home. I might be in the hospital. My intention is to podcast from the hospital, but it's hard to say. But in theory, in 2 weeks, we will be doing Jessica Jones Season 3. So we'll see what happens.
I'm hoping no. Look, here's how this is going to work for that show. I'm going to wait until like the day before. And then I'm going to message Mark and say, I'm petitioning the governor for last-minute clemency.
Okay. You can check out our...
And he's then going to say, no, and here's what's going to happen. He's going to say, clemency not granted, shut up and suffer. I have said if the first 4 to 5 episodes are as bad as the end of season 2, I'm just stopping. I don't care. I am not putting myself through that.
I have not heard good things about this season.
Of course. Because of course. Then I'm going to suffer the day before because I'll put this off as long as possible. I'll make sure I have enough time to see everything so I can perform my duties. Then the day of, Mark is going to message me and go, I feel like absolute dog ass. We're canceling it, and I'm going to throw something. Like, this is the governor calling for clemency 20 minutes after the prisoner is declared dead.
So
that's what's going to happen to me.
I'm going to watch it on June 28th while I'm in preparations for my bone marrow biopsy.
I imagine the bone marrow biopsy will be less painful than Kristen Ritter making pained faces at the screen.
I just hope this time they have a long enough needle for my fat ass, because the last time they didn't. And it's funny because I said to him at the time, I was like, we didn't realize how big you were, and I didn't have the right needle, and so we didn't get the sample that we needed. And I'm looking at him like, I didn't get this fat while I was laying here. You knew this before I got here.
Look, what, were you looking at me through the rear view mirror and ignored the objects in mirror maybe closer than they appear kind of sticker?
I didn't know there were funhouse mirrors in Moffat that made me look thinner. It's the fuck, dude.
Yeah, Doc, that's a bad look, man.
So it was funny when they said that in order to get into this clinical trial, I was going to have to do some more tests than had initially been scheduled when I was taking the commercial product. And he was like, we're gonna have to redo that bone marrow biopsy. I'm like, yeah, this time get a fucking harpoon, all right? Whatever. I have to lose weight. Why am I the only person who gets cancer and gains weight? How the fuck does that work? Anywho,
I'm sorry. I hate to sound like I'm laughing at your pain.
No, dude. If I'm doing bits on it, it's okay to laugh. If you were like doing the and pulling on your collar, I'd have to I'd have to keep going until I made you laugh. Quite frankly.
All right. I will remember that for next time, and I'll do the guy.
There was a comedian I used to watch live on. I think it's like Live on the Sunset Strip is a Richard Pryor thing. Comic Strip Live, I think is what it was called. It was they showed it late nights on, I think, Fox, and it was this one, and the one host, he would there was 3 or 4 comedians in whatever time slot this was, and he hosted the show. He was the MC, and I remember he did a joke. I don't even remember what the joke was, but nobody laughed.
You're not referencing Comics Unleashed, are you?
Maybe.
Oh, because that was such a terrible show. It's just a bunch of comics sitting around, and then the host deliberately feeding them a line to set up one of their 2-minute bits.
I don't think it was that.
Okay, because again, that was terrible.
No, this was traditional stand-up, club stand-up comedy.
Okay.
Anyway, he did this joke. Nobody laughed, and he just kind of paused for a moment and goes, "Folks, I'll keep doing this until you do laugh." And I made that my mantra for life. I was like, I bow to you. You are my god.
You're my spirit animal, sir.
Yeah, I was a kid when I saw that, and I'm just like, yep, I'm taking that one to my grave. In any case,
keep doing this until you laugh.
For those of you who are joining us on Podcoin, we have reviews for Endgame from earlier this year that you can check out.
Pretty much every major cinematic release from 2018, 2019, 2017, we've probably got a review for it.
We've got...
I have suffered a lot.
We have movie reviews for Endgame, Detective Pikachu, John Wick 3, Aladdin, Godzilla, and what was the one last week? Dark Phoenix. We've got television reviews for Sabrina, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Cobra Kai, She-Ra, Game of Thrones, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. We've got boxing coverage. So, if you're just now discovering us through the Podcoin app,
listen to Mark and I talk for an hour before the fighters walk to the ring, fight for 2 rounds, and then we talk about why Tyson Fury is awesome.
Yeah, hear me. Go back and check out the Deontay Wilder coverage and hear me laugh out loud as it ends in 1 round. Anyway, So yeah,
Then listen to the three of us actually talk about good heavyweight fights.
Yes. So yeah, go back in the archives. We have movie reviews for just about everything, going all the way back to Glass in January. And if you can't find the new movie reviews, there's old movie reviews. We did the one for Godzilla 1998. Those reviews are called On Trial. The Three Musketeers, the Disney version of it with Kiefer Sutherland and Charlie Sheen. We've done a bunch. We did one for Unbreakable. So we've got a lot of content. The Radulich Broadcasting Network has been around in this form probably since 2011. Robert and I have been reviewing movies for the last couple of years together. So there's plenty of stuff for you to check out back in the archives, and some of it even sounds decent. The other shows this week and next
For certain
week.
values of some indecent.
Speaking of Robert, he was with us on the Metal Hammer of Doom, which is our metal review show. We reviewed the Nettle band, Oakley Dokley, Howdly Doodly. This week, myself and Jesse will be reviewing the new Rammstein. Next week, the new Amon Amoth, Berserker. And maybe possibly could be Upon a Burning Body, Southern Hostility. As far as television reviews go, we've got the new Black Mirror Season 5 coming up on the 27th of June. Comic books, that is source material. You can check out our reviews of Gotham Central Book 1, Heroes in Crisis, that'll be debuting on June 24th. The Dark Phoenix Saga, Godzilla Kingdom of Monsters, and what would we do on the 27th? X-Men Blood Ties. Some of these I'm on, some of these, it's hosted by Jesse Starcher. Some of them I'm on, some of them I don't always make it. And we're also getting in some wrestling coverage. We've got coverage of the first AEW pay-per-view. We did the last NXT TakeOver. Theoretically, we'll be reviewing Fyter Fest, which is June 29th. That's an AEW show that's actually streaming for free on Bleacher Report. So if you're into wrestling and you're curious to see what we think about that, we'll put up a review of that. That's also
It all sucks.
That's also the same day as Ngannou versus Dos Santos on the UFC, Dawson versus Rankin which is boxing on Facebook Live, and Charlo versus Adams on Showtime. So lots of writing and lots of combat sports Saturday, June 29th for you. All right, Podcoin, check it out. If wherever you're finding this, go to Podcoin. Subscribe to the Radulich Broadcasting Network, and get paid to listen to podcasts, people. That's the way to be. There's no reason not to. It's not going to cost you a thing. Just some time. And you're already listening to podcasts, so what time are you really sacrificing? Podcoin, people. Podcoin. Podcoin. And now
Robert,
Robert...
spelled it with a K.
No. And now Robert's going to tell you about some MMA show he does.
Yeah, I am the host of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. It records Sunday evenings, gets posted usually that same time, so actually accounting for the time delay to the East Coast, somewhere around midnight or so Eastern Standard Time. Jeff was unable to make it to our show this last week, but he should be back. It was Father's Day, and look, he had family stuff, I had family stuff. I barely got back in time to record it. I mean, it's not a timed thing anymore, but it was not the highest priority for me this Father's Day. I spent a lot of time with my dad. He's getting prepared to move again. Sort of. It's a thing. You don't care, so I won't go into it. But, so it's just me, and relatively light week. There's a preview for the event in Greenville, South Carolina that's coming up this Saturday. It's not a great card. There's some news that happened. Chael Sonnen retired again. I think it's for good this time. No, seriously, I actually do think he's done again. He's done this time. Kyoji Horiguchi continues to be awesome. They've announced some new main events for upcoming events. A few of these came pretty close. We just barely got the announcement for I think the one at the end of July. It's the next... I had to look this up because it was real. They really cut this one close. It might even be sooner than that. Jeez. Yeah, the July 20th card just barely got its main event the last week. Rafael dos Anjos and Leon Edwards. The UFC's return to China got a bit of an odd main event. it will be women's strawweight champion Jessica Andrade fighting Weili Zhang, who is ranked, I believe, number 6 or 7.
But she's a Chinese Chinaman, so there you go.
And in fairness, Weili Zhang is an awesome fighter. She's in so far over her head here, though. Jessica Andrade is
Hometown
a tank.
hero. Hometown hero.
Yeah, she look again. I think Zhang's a really good fighter. I think she's a legitimate, prospect becoming contender in that division. I'm not trying to sell her short at all. She got this opportunity in this spot because
China.
she can be because
China.
nationalism and because Jessica Andrade was willing to take the fight for the title over there under. I hope she got paid extra, man. I really do. So we talked a little bit about those, and I think it wasn't a whole lot of news, so you can listen to full thoughts on that.
But not on Podcoin. Got to get on Podcoin, Robert.
I think it is there, actually. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Not that I've seen. I've looked.
Okay. Look, Mark, until they start paying us, I don't care.
No,
I can.
Podcoin.
You going to cut me a check?
Well, if I ever get one.
You cut me a check, I'll start playing nice. Alternatively, if you get enough feedback that I'm the reason you're not getting a check from them, I will change my tune.
Okay.
Look, I say that just because, guys, you out there, I don't care how you listen. I really don't. I care that you do listen. You take of your time to listen to Mark and I ramble, or me ramble in different, however.
Let me add this.
And that is what matters.
If you're
How
listening
you
to
do
us, if you're listening to us on iTunes, please leave us a 1-star review and tell us we're terrible.
Yeah, I'd like that. I'd like to be accurate, to get accurate feedback.
Look, everyone asks for 5-star reviews, whether they deserve it or not. I'm asking for a 1-star review. Tell us to eat shit and die. That's what I'm waiting for.
So, anyway, this Saturday I will have live coverage of the UFC's event in South Carolina. It's UFC on ESPN plus 12, I think. Again, not a great card, but I'm in the MMA zone of 411mania.com, so if you're interested, stop by. Stop by that website. You can leave a comment if you're so inclined. You can just follow along. You can see how bad I am at it. Or you can enjoy it. Look, I'm down on my work always because I am.
Sam Riccati never told you that yours was hard to follow, so just stop putting yourself down.
Look, I accept that there are people out there worse at what I do.
Yeah,
than
me. I was.
You don't do it anymore. You don't count.
Oh, okay.
I mean, currently, there are people out there who are worse at what I do than I am. I know that. Fair play. I'm not the worst. I also know that there's people who are better than me. And I appreciate everyone who does follow what I do because I know it's not of the highest quality. I try to get better every time. I put forth effort.
It's 2 hours and 15 minutes. I wanted to be done in an hour.
All right. So, Ian, if you're so interested, please follow along. This Saturday will be a review of that event and a preview of the UFC on ESPN, the Ngannou versus Dos Santos card. So tune in for that. Again, Jeff Harris should be back on the show this week, and it's nice. I like talking to Jeff. So, and especially after back-to-back weeks of talking to myself. It's faster, but I like conversation more than just monologuing. So sue me. All right. I think that is going to wrap us up here. That's all my plugs. Thank you to everyone for listening. If you're on Podcoin and you clicked out after the first 10 minutes, you're never going to hear this, so get bent. For those of you who did listen all the way through, thank you very much for going all the way through. We actually it helps elements of the analytics if you listen to essentially all the way through the podcast. So thank you all very much for that. Always appreciated. We're back next week. Alexis Hana will be back. We'll be talking Toy Story 4. You want to know what actually gave me more pause to be again, you and I saw the trailer for this and went, yeah. It's 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes right now, which
98.
Fair enough. Okay, it dropped a little bit.
Yeah.
Wait, it's 98?
As of this recording, yes.
I believe that makes it the least the lowest rated, the lowest reviewed entry into the franchise. I think the others are like 99, 100, and 99.
Mm-hmm.
Might even be 100, 199. Look, the Toy Story trilogy is the most perfect trilogy in all of film. But there's actually there's some promotional material that's kind of been circulating that, Tom Hanks is saying, yeah, it's a tearjerker. And if you have to say it beforehand, look, nobody said there was no promotional material for Toy Story 3 that was you're going to cry. We all knew. Everyone and their dog understood, I'm going to go see this movie, I'm going to bawl my eyes out. I know I did. If you're having to say, yeah, it's a tearjerker, be prepared, I don't know, man. I don't know. Again, I do not have a lot of high hopes for that movie. I am prepared to be wrong about this one. Trailers have been wrong before, but this one, anyway, you'll get a full review next week, so thank you all in advance for coming back for that. Always appreciated. Everybody stay safe out there, and please, I'm going to do the outro in place of Mark, so he has to be ready with the button. Continue to be well, be safe, and behave.